You know that feeling, right? As a business leader, you're investing in top-tier security, your teams are working harder than ever, and yet you're still hitting the same frustrating roadblocks. Well, what if I told you that a lot of those problems, from security gaps to those awful audits, all come from one single hidden cause?
Does this ring a bell? You're constantly chasing down security gaps, you're bracing for another painful audit, or you're struggling to bounce back from a disruption. It can honestly feel like you're playing a never-ending game of whack-a-mole. But here's the thing. What if these aren't separate fires you have to put out? What if they're all just smoke, pointing to a single, much deeper issue?
All right, so in this first part, we're going to pull back the curtain. It's time to actually name the hidden root cause that's been quietly undermining all of your best efforts.
Now, this is really important. This isn't about your teams not trying hard enough. They aren't failing. Your tools aren't necessarily the problem either. The real issue is a fundamental structural weakness, one that, ironically, often comes from success, as your business grows and innovates.
This systemic weakness actually has a name. It's called digital fragmentation. And it's what happens when different teams, all with the best intentions, adopt the best tools for their specific jobs. But over time, this creates this kind of dangerous patchwork of disconnected systems and processes. What starts as a sign of healthy growth silently becomes your biggest vulnerability.
Probably the best way to think about it is like this. Digital fragmentation creates a cracked foundation for your entire business. I mean, you could have the strongest security tools and the most dedicated compliance teams in the world. But if the foundation they're built on is unstable, the whole thing is at risk.
So what really happens when you're operating on a foundation that's full of cracks? The consequences, they're not just theoretical, they are painful, they are costly, and they're probably going to sound very familiar. Let's take a look at the specific cracks that start to appear.
Okay, first up, security. When your systems are all fragmented, your security becomes fragile. Controls get applied inconsistently, your monitoring tools don't talk to each other, and all of this creates dangerous blind spots. And believe me, it's those exact gaps that attackers are specifically looking for.
This fragmentation doesn't just create security gaps, it makes compliance a total nightmare. If you've ever dreaded an audit, this is why. Your evidence is scattered across dozens of systems, which forces your teams into this slow, manual scramble that's just full of potential errors. The result is what you might call paper compliance, a bunch of documents that tick the right boxes but don't really reflect what's actually happening on the ground.
And it doesn't stop there. Your resilience, your ability to bounce back, takes a major hit. When some kind of disruption happens, a fragmented system makes it almost impossible to quickly figure out what went wrong and coordinate a response. And even worse, the lessons from these incidents often just get lost because there's no single unified system to capture them.
This problem goes all the way up to the boardroom. When systems are disconnected, leaders are forced to make really critical decisions with incomplete and often conflicting data. And when something inevitably goes wrong, that same fragmentation makes it nearly impossible to trace who was accountable for what.
And ultimately, all these cracks lead to very real, very high costs. We're talking financial damage from breaches and fines, tons of wasted resources on manual work, and of course, lost revenue. But maybe the highest price you pay is the erosion of trust from your customers and from regulators.
Okay, so that's the bad news. Digital fragmentation is a big, systemic problem. But the good news? It's a solvable one. So let's pivot now and talk about the solution, a fundamental shift toward unified governance.
We go from that cracked, unstable foundation we saw earlier to this. The solution isn't about adding more disconnected tools. It's about building a strong, interconnected digital ecosystem. This is the goal, a coordinated, resilient, and totally audit-ready environment where all the parts are finally working in harmony.
The real antidote to fragmentation is achieving something called operational coherence. You can think of it like this visual. It's about intentionally weaving together your high-level governance, your day-to-day operations, and your performance metrics until they form a single, strong, unified fabric.
So how do you actually achieve that coherence? The framework for this is the Digital Value Management System, or DVMS. And here's the most critical thing to get. This is not another piece of software you have to buy. It's a governance layer that's designed to sit on top of the technology you already have. So this governance layer works by connecting your high-level strategy directly to your day-to-day execution. It standardizes controls across all your different systems, and it creates a continuous, automated flow of evidence.
And by doing that, you establish clear ownership and finally eliminate those dangerous blind spots.
This chart really puts the transformation in a nutshell. I mean, just look at this direct comparison. Every single consequence of fragmentation we talked about is directly addressed. Fragile security becomes coordinated security. Constant compliance failure becomes audit-ready compliance. Weakness becomes resilience. And guesswork becomes informed, data-driven decision-making. It's a direct solution to the root cause.
So, what does this new approach actually look like in practice? Let's go ahead and chart the path forward to building a truly resilient ecosystem. The ultimate goal here is to build this single, coherent operating model. An environment where good security and compliance aren't just checklists you run through before an audit. They're actually baked into the very fabric of how your business operates, day in and day out. And this leads to a really powerful shift in perspective. You can transform fragmentation from a source of risk into an opportunity for improvement. It means you're no longer just plugging holes. You're fundamentally upgrading how your entire organization operates. So this leaves us with one final question to think about for your own business. Are you content to keep chasing the symptoms, patching holes and scrambling for audits, or are you ready to look deeper and finally fix the foundation?